How much money do you really need to retire? $1 million seems to be the answer that a majority of Americans give, but most people have found 1.27 million is a lot more comfortable. 1.8 million is what Charles Schwab has said to retire, which means depending on how much you have saved today, you could have a long way to go. So in today's video, we're going to be looking at how much money you really need and asking some of the very important questions that are really the fundamentals when it comes to retirement. Now, if you're like me and looking to retire a little bit early, you're going to have essentially a stockpile of money to support you if I'm retiring at 50 until I get to 62, where I can start taking Social Security, or at that point, if I need to take Social Security. So a lot of people have a financial goal in mind, really staying motivated, staying on track. And there's also the wrong question, which is how much money do I need? Which again, people kind of put a number associated with this. But the most important retirement number, as most of us have, how much income can you generate after retirement? Now, again, this is a different way to kind of think about it, is when you get to retirement and Social Security comes in, Social Security is meant to replace roughly 40% of your pre-retirement income. Now, this, of course, is going to be based on exactly how much money you have and how much money you earn, because if you're a high earner, chances are Social Security is going to be a drop in the bucket compared to how much you needed to have saved. If you're making, let's say, $150,000, $200,000, $350,000, you have to make and continue to generate the returns. Now, something that I noticed today when I was talking to individuals is when it comes to the return, a lot of people that do use, let's say, target date funds will move a majority of the investment funds into bonds. We'll see a little bit of a shift kind of over time, and they really negate or really don't pay any attention to the growth factor. So again, when you're starting to think big picture, and this is the way that you have to view it, me personally, this is the way that I view it, is if you're retiring, let's say at the age of 65, estimated, male is 87 to 90 years old. So you're talking, 20 plus years of retirement income that you are still going to have. That means not only retiring on your retirement income, so those 401k plans, those IRAs, to essentially give you annualized income to supplement Social Security that you're getting, so you can continue with kind of the same pace of life or the same standard of living that you have had. But now that also begs the question, do you have enough money to sustain essentially those 20 years without having a larger portfolio, being able to get that compounding interest, or being able to draw out of there? Now, general rule of thumb, when it comes to retirement versus pre-retirement, so when you're getting ready to retire, it shows retirees need about 80% of the pre-retirement income to maintain the standard of living. However, for a majority of people, this doesn't ring true. And the reason being, to be comfortable in retirement, a lot of times replacing just 80% of that income is not enough, because now you have a lot more time on your hands. If you're like a majority of individuals that are working 40, 50, 60 hours a week, and then of course you move into retirement, now you have that 40, 50, 60 hours a week that is completely open and available, meaning that a lot of times when you didn't spend any money because you were earning money at work, now you're off doing a bunch of things that you couldn't do because you were tied to that 9 to 5 job. And essentially, a lot of people take expensive trips, they buy expensive vehicles. We see the retirement income actually go around or go away pretty quick. But if you think about that number, thinking 80% for pre-retirement, if you make a $100,000 salary, that means you need about $80,000 per year in retirement for that 80%, which again, for a majority of people with the supplement of Social Security, you're going to have a pretty high taxable account. And we know when most people get to retirement, they're about $175K that they have saved in 401ks or IRAs, which is grossly underestimating the amount of money they need. So how much do you need in savings? This again is kind of a question. When it gets to retirement, there's going to be a portion that you're going to have completely liquid, which is going to be in savings. Essentially, that way you don't have to touch those retirement accounts until you hit a certain point. Make sure, of course, that you're going to the Social Security Administration site, seeing the estimate of how much money you're going to have. Now, also, you have to consider if you're getting money from any other sources. This could include your pensions, your annuities, if you have any side hustle, side income, if you have any passive, if you have rental properties, if you have cash. There's a lot of things that, again, you have to supplement, because based on your income, if you're replacing 80% of that, where is that 80% of income going to come from? If you look at Social Security, even for me, I believe I'm at about $2,500 a month, which means I still have to make up a considerable amount of income to get where me and my wife are. And again, it is just simple math, simple basic math at this. Run the numbers, guys. Check out where you're at with Social Security Administration, how much you're estimated to get every single month, how much you're spending based on the budget that we've kind of completed or the spending plan, and making sure exactly where that's going to be. Now, there is a general rule of thumb, but it is not a hard really rule to run by. The no perfect rule of thumb often uses the 4%. Now, if you remember Dave Ramsey, he talks about the comfortable withdrawal of the 4% in retirements out of brokerage accounts in the first year, 4% every single year. Now, again, when you think of the growth, just thinking of like the S&P 500, where let's say theoretically we're getting a 10% return in there. If you're taking out 4% every single year, it is still growing by 6%, which means you're never going to run out of money in that plan if you're only taking out 4%. Some people are saying they need 6%, some are 7, some are 8. And again, this is going to be based on that mathematical calculation that you did, where you figured out exactly how much money you're going to have to supplement that you're not going to be retiring or you're not going to be receiving from those Social Security years. And of course, you're going to have to factor in inflation. So roughly, we know the Federal Reserve is trying to get to 2% inflation, but is it theoretically possible? For most of these, they run about a 3% inflation. Again, just thinking at the numbers. So if you're taking out 4%, you have 3% that is the account for inflation. You're roughly running about 7% that you're taking out of those retirement accounts because, of course, as the depreciation of everything kind of goes around, so roughly 7%, if it's growing at that 10%, this is going to make a big difference. Now, a quick math trick you can use is when you look at the certain amount of income, multiply it by 25, and that is what you need. For instance, if you're making $45,000 a year, multiply it by 25, you're at $1.125 million in retirement savings, which is going to essentially sustain you for the rest of your life. So again, making it very, very important that you do know these numbers, you're running these numbers, and you know exactly what you do need to supplement when it comes to the money. So the bottom line of this, don't make any assumptions when it comes to retirement. And honestly, if you're going in here and you're investing more that you can, if you're putting your 10 or 15% away, the more you're putting into retirement, the better you're going to be. There's not really a tailored formula that fits everyone, but overall, making more income during retirement is going to be super enjoyable. If there's anything you've always wanted to do, if you start wanting to cross things off that bucket list, you're going to actually have the ability to, because you have the money in retirement accounts, savings accounts, and knowing exactly how much income you're going to need to sustain your essentially quality of life as it sits today is really going to be up to you. Now, of course, with this, the money that you need for retirement, the younger that you start making those contributions, the better you're going to be. In addition, setting up some HSA accounts, if you're eligible for HSAs, a lot of people overlook them, but if you can go into retirement, let's say having $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 into an HSA account, you can cover a multitude of years of medical expenses, which means that you're going to need less per month because essentially HSAs are going to cover some of it. Now, looking at 401ks and IRAs, I always recommend the Roth variation just because all of the growth you're going to see in there is completely tax-free, meaning you're not going to be paying taxes on the backside when you start doing those RMDs or when you start taking money out of there because you have already paid the money. And also the very sweet spot they talk about is between retirement and the actual time you start drawing Social Security. That is really the very, very sweet spot where if you're looking to do a conversion from a traditional IRA into a kind of Roth conversion, you can convert every single year. And again, if you retire, let's say at 50, if I get Social Security at 62, that would essentially give me 12 years that I could do conversions of what I have in traditional plans, moving it over and paying the taxes, putting it into Roth to let it grow pretty much for the rest of my life and leaving it for my kids. But all right, guys, that is going to go over how much money do you really need for retirement. Hope it's really some eye-opening information. Let me know in the comments what you guys think. And as always, thank you guys for watching.